It's a great pleasure to be here, and I hope this is the beginning, Dave, of a tremendous partnership, of a natural marriage of interests when it comes to Wall Street and architecture and urbanism. These are the topics: the history of real estate, the history of finance, the cycles of boom and bust that create the skyline the skyline really is a graph of the cycles of investment in the city. And this is something that hasn't really been, I think, properly appreciated by the scholarly community, and it's been a tough, hard slog trying to bring real estate developers into the pantheon of the important people in the academic history of the making of the city. But it's such a no-brainer that this is the case that I hope that we can really combine our forces a little bit more in order to bring this into greater awareness. So in order to tell you a little bit more about the Skyscraper Museum, for those of you who are newcomers to us and have not, how many people have not yet been downtown to the museum? Only a few. Good. Then I don't have to talk for too long, but I can show those people very quickly some of the images of the museum and some of the logic for this evening. So is there any way that the lights can go down in the very front so that we can see the images better, or not? I'm an art historian by training, so I like dark rooms, and I like people to see the pictures and not be looking at me so much. So what you can see here is an image from Fortune magazine, so the base of business, but talking about Wall Street, the place, and this tremendous rise of the architectural, wonderful, thank you, the architectural expression of Wall Street, which is a rise from small to tall, and that's what the subject of our exhibition, The Rise of Wall Street, is at the museum. So here's our subject for this evening: the street with a graveyard at one end, and at the other, the river. And Alex Washburn's going to be talking about the river end of Wall Street and its future. So if you haven't been to the Skyscraper Museum, there we are at the Red Star in the southern end of Battery Park City. And if you go to our website, you can read all about our history and see lots of our projects. This is a really colorized version of our permanent home, our shiny permanent home, which is designed by SOM, and is on the ground floor. It's a little bit raised from the ground floor on a ramp in the same building as the Ritz-Carlton Hotel and residences. And this is what it looked like when it was brand new, when we opened the permanent home in 2004. But the Skyscraper Museum really got its start on Wall Street because the first of our temporary homes as a nomadic museum was right across the street from here at 44 Wall Street, where I put up the first exhibition called Downtown New York, The Architecture of Business, the Business of Buildings. And it explored the various aspects, the lenses through which architecture of downtown in particular, of skyscrapers specifically, could be viewed. And we collected a lot of material. Well, we assembled it for an exhibition, and then we gave it back, because at that point we were only becoming a museum, and now we have a little bit of a collection that we house on site. But most of the things that we look at in topics of exhibitions are on loan and then are given back, because our whole space, as you just saw, it was only 5,000 square feet, but it is our permanent home. But in this building, the Bankers Trust building on the corner of Wall and Nassau, we put our sign, which is a real kick, in 1998. And a little bit of the history from that last postcard is that the Bankers Trust building, when it replaced the 18-story skyscraper, which was the Gillender building on the same site, only 23 feet wide site, 73 feet long. This building was about 3 times as big in its floor plate. But when in 1910 the Gillender building was sold and this building was about to be erected, it was the most expensive land conveyance in the history of the world. That was higher than the one in 1905, which was at 1 Wall Street at that address, and there were a whole series of transactions through history that were the most expensive land conveyance in the history of the world, and they all happened on Wall Street. I'm going to talk about that very briefly in a minute, but this is the space that we occupied in 1999 in the Great Banking Hall of 14 Wall. It's actually the 1930 renovation and expansion of the building that was done by Shreve, Lamb & Harmon, the architects of the Empire State Building, so we put in an exhibition called Building the Empire State. We, in our permanent home now, and if you come down to the museum, you'll see this exhibition that has occasioned this evening, The Rise of Wall Street. And if you're lazy or at home after our closing hours, you can see the whole thing in a virtual format and read all of our label copy and see the installation views on our website. And that's one of the home screen for that. This is what the exhibition looks like installed, and just to go quickly through it, you see the kinds of artifacts that we like to feature in our cases, but we like to use the whole scale of the space, and especially our stainless steel floor and ceiling, which exaggerates everything in what I call a vertical Versailles, an extremely elongated vertical sense of space in a 5,000 square foot footprint, which is actually quite small. And you see in the exhibition installation some of the models and the various kinds of representations that we use to tell the story of individual buildings and individual addresses on Wall Street, where we drill down. But we have a little prelude to this, and this is appropriate for setting up this evening. The history of Wall Street from really colonial times up into 1850, when the exhibition begins to focus its attention on the business district. So, of course, the Costello plan of New Amsterdam shows the wall that gave Wall Street its name. And then this is just a short series of engraving slides over the 18th and 19th century that show you the different characters of the street. Because what we want to look at tonight is the new character of the street. So, of course, Wall Street began at its East River end, where the commerce of New Amsterdam was focused. And you can see there the port activities, the counting houses and the warehouses and the business merchants. You see in the center the Tontine Coffee House, which, as most of you from the Museum of American Finance would know, is the first place where trading was done by the merchants that eventually established the New York Stock Exchange. So it was a port street. It was a mercantile street. As the century progressed, and here you see in the late 1700s, 1790s, you see the address of 48 Wall Street, this very plot, when it's the patrician house of William Waldron, and this became the location for the first site of the Bank of New York. So it was a residential street, but by 1850, its identity as the financial district is already established. So you're seeing it here in an engraving that shows the buildings that look like little Greek treasuries over on the right-hand side. Those are all the Bank of Manhattan Company, the Merchants Bank, and it's a business street by 1850, as it will be through the remaining centuries, and as now it begins to shift its identity a little bit, but of course dominated by Trinity Church, which looms above in a last gasp before the elevator is invented, and the rise of capitalism is reflected in the rise of skyscrapers. And I always like to show this particular image. It's a land map of 1903 by Richard Hurd, one of the first land economists. And if you can see, I'm not sure I can get I shouldn't have hit that one, but now I probably need help. And the pointer would, okay, highest land values, Broadway, Wall Street, Wall, and Nassau, when I just spoke about the highest land, the most expensive land conveyance with the Bankers Trust. You can see that Wall Street holds the greatest value. At the beginning of the 20th century, land that was $350, $400 a square foot was the most expensive land in the world. It was the only American city, New York, and here in the financial district, that measured its land by square foot value rather than by frontage foot. And so this is the story that we're exploring tonight. Over the 20th century, the span of time of the rise and fall of real estate value is reflected in many things, in skyscrapers certainly, and it's reflected in the value of, well, let's say this particular building that goes up and down. At the beginning of the century, I said that Bankers Trust sale to build that skyscraper, to exploit the value of the land, was the most expensive purchase price ever. And as you saw on the sign, at the end of the 20th century, with the Skyscraper Museum, occupied it for free. It was vacant space with no value. So from the most expensive to a present no value, these mark the not just the ends of the century. They just happen to be moments when that cycle of growth and change, that tidal wave of economic expression, is played out on the street. And of course, tonight it's the changing fortunes of Wall Street. The main part of that, and my last slides, being the 1920s, when you're seeing the Bankers Trust building as a new building is being is going to be built around it in 1930. So the old buildings are demolished, and you see that the Tower of Strength, as it was called, the Bankers Trust, with the other buildings demolished and excavated, and all the towers around it that are all built from 1928 to 1931, in a 3-year period. All of those skyscrapers of 50 to 70 stories are added to Wall Street in a 3-year period. And that's another expression of these fits and starts of urban growth, of the great cycles of economic investment. Happens especially in the 1920s. And you can see that in our graphic that we have in the exhibition we call Vertical Wall Street. So it's this that we're exploring tonight. From the 1850s, through these different bands of development, where you can see juxtaposed one on top of the other, the taller buildings that replace the low-rise ones. The evolution from small to tall, which is a technological accomplishment, certainly, in order to create larger and taller buildings, but also the growth in girth that you see in a building that is just within this same block at 60 Wall Street, added in 1987. So the one that we're in, that you see, well, I can't point to it, but 48 Wall, the even larger building, 40 Wall, a 70-story skyscrapers. So that is the 1920 climax species, and really the last generation of big buildings to be added in the office building identity of Wall Street is 60 Wall Street. And there you see its great big floor plates reflecting a different technology, but you see that it assembles and accumulates about 9 different lots that had been individually developed in all of the different bands. So savvy and strategic site assembly is an extraordinarily important part of the investment cycle and expression of building on the street. So that's the whole of Wall Street on 2 sides. And we can turn the lights back on, and I will quickly, because it takes too long myself on this, quickly introduce our speakers, who will come up each in turn to the podium, show either PowerPoint or not for a few minutes on their individual topics. And I think it'll be clear when they speak what their topics are. But the overall topic is the history of the recent history of the street. The last 20 years or so, as you see with the last of the big office buildings being an investment on the street. But now the changing character of the fabric of the street, which is a landmark district now. Wall Street will be unchanging in its facades, but it will continue to change enormously in its internal workings, in the program of the conversion to residential. And Kent Swig is going to be talking about how he makes evaluations about what's the right use for a building. Liz Berger, who will speak first and I'll introduce in a second, will talk about the public space. As president of the Downtown Alliance, this is her bailiwick. Well, you'll talk about the public of the neighborhood as well as the public space. But then Rob Rogers, our architect, will speak specifically on his design for the streetscape and the public space, and he will be followed by Kent Swig, and then Alex Washburn from the Department of City Planning will talk especially about the public realm and some of the city's plans for that now neglected end of Wall Street, which is the East River end, the place where it began. So that's the shape of the evening. And Liz will come up first. So Liz is the president of the Downtown Alliance, which is New York's largest business improvement district. She's been here since 2007, I think I remember, and has been doing a bang-up job in great initiatives that really do deal with the public space, which is why I'm thinking of you within that realm. But of course, the Downtown Alliance has members who are building owners, and they keep the streets clean, safe, and well lit, as all business improvement districts do. But Liz has really been doing a spectacular job in the character of all of her previous sort of iterations of a profession, of doing public service and public advocacy, sometimes on the professional side, sometimes on the public side. So she'll be telling us about the demographic changes in downtown in this last decade or so. Then Rob Rogers, who is founding principal of Rogers Marvel, a marvelous architectural firm who works on many a public space project as well as architectural buildings as well. But they were called upon by the Department of City Planning, the LMDC, and the EDC, Economic Development Corporation, to undertake the streetscape design, which is largely in response to the signal event, of course, in the recent history of Wall Street, which is 9/11. So all of the security that you walked past in order to get here has been disguised somewhat by Rogers Marvel, and Rob will speak about that. And then, as I said, Kent Swig, who is the president of Swig Equities, and which is an investment and development firm and owns many buildings all over, but especially in the financial district, and has played a very instrumental role in thinking about how to reinvent this neighborhood and make new kinds of value by conversion of older Class B, Class C properties into residential buildings. So Kent will talk about what he does. And then, as I already mentioned, Alex Washburn, who is the chief urban designer from the Department of City Planning, has been in public service in a lot of different design issues, as an architect, of course, by training, and has been working on many projects all around the city, but has also been thinking specifically about Wall Street and the public realm here. So those are our speakers for this evening. So Liz.